Hello, friends, and welcome to the Weekend Catch-Up Club, the coffee morning show brought to you live every Saturday direct to Twitch and available later on demand at youtube.com/gamertagged and podcast services. Grab some snacks, grab a drink, and hang out with us for just a little bit, because joining me today is a very special guest. It is from Roll7, the senior UI and UX designer, Anisa Sanusi. Welcome to the show, Anisa.
Hi, very nice to see you and everybody who's watching this, I guess.
How are you? It was a little bit stressful getting all set up from both of us on a technical level there, but now we've managed to get everything connected and flowing okay.
It was just pure chaos for a while, wasn't it? But I'm so glad to be here for sure. So I think I've seen a few episodes of this, so I was just like, oh, cool, let's try doing this and see what's going to happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Hopefully, it's there's not too nervousness or anything like that. It'll just be a good laugh and nothing too crazy to talk about. Nothing too like prying or anything like that. It's just a case of getting cool people together on the show to chat video games, and you are pretty cool, judging from your Twitter posts the last little while.
I always get embarrassed when people talk to me about my Twitter posts, because it's one of those things where you kind of post it into the void and you don't expect anyone in real life to mention anything.
All I want to know is all of this roller skating stuff. First of all, when are you going pro for roller derby? And is this useful mocap data for olliolli world? Because that's coming out soon as well.
It is, yeah. So at Roll7, we've got a bunch of different projects going on, and olliolli we've announced it, and we are super excited at the response that we've had. People are really excited for it, which is great. But I'm actually on the other team, and the game that I'm on is still under NDA, still very much hush hush. I can't talk too much about it. But yeah, it's exciting, and I cannot wait to shout out about it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, please give us the full introduction as to your role, what you do at Roll7.
Right. So, hello, everybody. I am a senior UI UX designer. So what I do is user interface design, which is the visual bits of what you see in game, like the menus, the graphic design, everything you see, like HUD and all that. And the UX design, which is user experience. So that one is, kind of making sure it's usable and player friendly, so that players can understand the game without fighting through the systems and things like that. I want to make sure that whatever the designers decide, the players can just enjoy it without fighting with the game, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. So at Roll7, like I said, we've got two games going on at the same time, and we've just announced olliolli, which is a skateboarding game. Roll7's been, I think this is the third olliolli game, because we've had olliolli 1 and 2, and now this is the third one, which is called olliolli World. Yeah. And I'm in love with the design. It is super bright, super friendly. It's hilarious. All the characters are really, really funny, and they're all oozing in personality as well. I don't want to take too much credit, because I'm not on that team, but as someone who's kind of dipping in and out, looking at what the other team's working on, I'm super excited for it.
Take all the credit. This is the chance to just take all the glory as much as you can.
Yeah, so Roll7's actually just one person. It's me. It's just me.
Amazing. So I'm assuming you studied graphic design for that, and then adapting that into digital design and ultimately user experience, which is a whole other incredibly complex field into itself, not just in game development, but for marketing as well. There's a product design. It's a huge all-encompassing field, which is UI and UX.
Yeah, it's a whole job in itself. And funny enough, I think back when I was studying UI, obviously UI has always been a thing, UX as well, I guess, but it's only in the last, I want to say half a decade or last decade, where it's probably its own title, whereas before this it was kind of part of a different title, so like game design, and you kind of happen to just work on the UX of it. And if you're like a software developer, like that's just something you kind of have to do, but it wasn't really recognized as a job in itself until very, very recent. And you could literally go to school for it, specifically for UI UX these days. But during my time, gosh, I say it's like as if I'm super old. I'm really not that old. But when I went to university, which is like 10 years ago, we didn't have much courses around UI UX. I didn't know it was a thing until I started in the games industry. It was kind of something I stumbled upon, and I want to say like I scratched my way into it. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I want to be one of the cool designers, like how do I do this? So yeah.
It seems to be the type of profession that has really exploded, as you said, over like the last 5 years or so. And now every job posting that I see is always looking for like UX and UI design. And the amount of like training ads that keep popping up on my timeline feed now is all about switch careers, be a UX designer. And I think that's super exciting and interesting from a graphic designer who specializes in digital design for marketing campaigns and corporate design. The fact that it's no longer just a digital designer, it's got a proper name, a proper title, and a proper career path as well under the banner of user experience, because user experience is so broad and it encompasses so much. I mean, even like the initial process for kicking a project off, which is just, okay, how do you get the user data? How do you start mapping out the way in which players or users interact with your product to then better understand how to deliver that experience that they're going to not just bounce off your product because, it's not intuitive enough, the thing's bloody rubbish. So how do you then get all of that to make it something that is so obvious as a user to say, of course it's press here, go there, and then go, and the way you display the information. I can imagine it's a lot of fun, but incredibly challenging as well.
It is. I think the myth of UX is that it's all just on the screen, like how you push around, how you put a layout of a web page or things like that. But user experience is actually so much more than that. Like it's an offshoot of product design back, when products were physical objects, and how do you design that to make it like friendly to human to use. I mean, in UX at least, like the book that we keep recommending newbies to is always the Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, and that's kind of like our Bible. And it always starts off. It all starts off with physical objects, like door handles. That's one of the most well-known examples, right? Like, how do you know a door is a push door, slide door, pull door, and all of that is based off how it's designed. And when you're designing for a screen, this is why it's such a important role. It's because when it's on a screen, that is your only interface between you and the user. Like, how could you make sure that you could showcase your product the best way it can be towards the users? And I think that one of the reasons why it's blowing up right now is because obviously we're kind of a very digital world now. Everyone's kind of dependent on the internet for everything. But also we've got emerging technologies, which is, VR, AR, and XR, and everything like that. And they have very specific UX designers for those fields as well. And I get motion sick very easily. So I could never take up any VR jobs. So that entire industry is closed off for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I quite like it in a sense that it's so easy to pick up, so easy. I think that's why there's a lot of these ads going around, because it's easily taught, and and anyone can just pick it up during their free time. But it's difficult to master, I would say. I mean, you could say that about literally anything, can't you? Like, it's difficult to master, but that is really true with UX design, because I think anybody can do it, and most people do it, especially game designers. It's just part of the job. But to care about it in a very deep level, to be like an advocate for the player, for users, for human-centric design, that I think takes a different kind of breed of person.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and it's really, really interesting. So when you first got started into the industry, I noticed on your LinkedIn, because I have to stalk all my guests to try and get a little bit of information about them and see how they all started. So I'd love for you to explain how you obviously got started, and then maybe talk a little bit about those first mobile games that you developed, and how different UX design for mobile is completely different, or is it completely different, first of all, into taking those learnings over into the console space or the actual video game space, where you have either a mouse and keyboard or a gamepad or the touchscreen interface, because it's three very radically different interfaces ultimately.
Yeah. So I started my first job in the industry is actually as a 2D artist, because I studied animation in university. So back then I didn't really know what UI was, and my first job was 2D artist. But just so happened that a lot of the jobs that I had to do during that was UI work, because our art team was so small. It was just literally like 3 people. It was me, a concept artist, and a 3D modeler. So and our concept artist, he's like one of the most talented artist I've ever met, and he still is, but he can't really do graphic design.
Yeah.
It's not his forte. So I kind of naturally picked up a lot of those kind of work, because it came natural to me. I did obviously pick up some graphic design courses back university and college, but I wanted to be, the dream was to go work for Pixar or Disney or, one of those things. And, dreams are dreams. Let's just put it at that. So yeah, I think during the course of my work in my first job, that kind of ignited this passion for graphic design, as well as UI, because that opened up a lane towards my next job, which was with Frontier Developments. And Frontier, when I joined, they were known for Elite Dangerous, and I worked on a few smaller titles with them before working on one of the biggest titles that I'm very proud of, which is Planet Coaster. So Planet Coaster is like the current generation of Roller Coaster Tycoon, and that's a very UI heavy game, in a sense that it's a builder, it's a theme park management game. So and our fans are massive building nerds, let's say that. But they're also like the most loveliest people. And whilst we were designing that, we were we had alpha releases, so we were in constant conversation with the fan base, and it was just amazing seeing what people could do with the limited UI that we put in. Obviously by the time we released it, it was a bit more robust and it was better. But even before that, they were just making great, amazing builds with it. And I remember thinking how games can almost blur between just leisure and actual proper software, because we're basically building a whole like a 3D modeling software within the video game itself. I mean, if you look at Media Molecule's Dreams, that is literally a software packaged as a video game. It's insane what we're capable of these days.
That's fascinating, because Dreams is a playground, a creator's playground to build pretty much anything that you can absolutely imagine. Anything from racing games to puzzle games to just a weird ambient experience. And they've created this toolkit for anybody to just go in and just let their imagination run wild. And I can only imagine it's no wonder it took so long to create that. It was in development for such a long time.
It was,
I remember thinking the pitch of that when it was first unveiled, it's like, there's no way this is ever coming out. It's too weird. It's too ambitious. It's going to be made or broken on the strength of people just wanting to experiment. And people are either going to get frustrated at the lack of curated content, or they're just going to create a whole bunch of stuff which isn't up to the bar of quote unquote professional game development experiences. And of course I was wrong, but which is kind of standard, but that's totally fine. And the amount of stuff which is on there now, it is incredible. It could be a narrative adventure. It could be a platform game in the same vein of Astro's Playroom. It's just fascinating to see what people can create given the tools. And from a UX standpoint, that kind of game must have been kind of fascinating but exciting, I want to say.
Yeah. I know for a fact that they did have to hire a UX designer specifically for that game, which is good for them because you don't really see that many job postings that is specifically just UX design, because you always see like the UI/UX combo. And I know within the UI community, there's a lot of people trying to push for that divergence because UX is a whole job in itself. But obviously, most companies, especially smaller studios, they can't really afford one whole person just to do this one job, which I disagree with. You should totally get a UX person in there early. But yeah, it was really interesting to see that develop. And yeah, it's the fact that, Dreams you could build using a gamepad, which is a limited input device. And for us at Planet Coaster, it was a PC game. So, we had an entire keyboard and mouse clicks and, things that people are already familiar with. So I would say that I was actually quite spoiled in a sense that, like, we had a good team, we had really an amazing fan base and all that. And I was still pretty new to the industry as a whole. So I kind of learned a lot in that one game. And it was also the biggest team that I worked with, because since then, I've moved on to a mobile games company. And, that was a whole, like, just let's try something completely new again. Because with mobile games, you are playing the UI. You are literally playing the UI because, like, what else are you interacting with, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of different with consoles in a sense that, like, if you're controlling a character, you're controlling a 3D model. But with a lot of puzzle games or, anything that's usually quite mobile friendly, you need a physical button or things that you're, physically pressing on the screen.
Yeah. Things that are more tactile feedback rather than just a touch screen where you don't,
And also we have, I remember one of the biggest issues was that in comparison to like consoles, mobile screens there's like 300 different sizes, as in there's so many different resolutions. Like why are Android like this? This kind of, I am an iPhone user, but also with iPhones, you kind of know how many there are, and it's a set number. Whereas with Android, oh my goodness, it's like every size you could ever imagine. And what's the worst thing is that with newer phones, at least, is the design for the camera. So so like I'm just using my own phone as an example here, but like, so like the iPhone has the notch at the top, but some Android devices, you have like a punch hole camera on one side.
Okay.
And then you have another, some are like on the other side, and some do use the notch, some just don't have a notch at all. So like you have to, every time we're designing for the screen, we have to account for all these really weird designs. And you kind of have to be like, okay, so this works for the iPhone, but it doesn't work for this specific model of a Samsung phone or something. And that was the biggest pain in my butt.
I remember when I first got into digital design, moving in, because I was a graphic designer originally, then moving into digital specifically. Designing just a simple website, for example, used to be fairly straightforward. It was the most common resolution was 1024 by 768 or something, and that was easy. That was just fine. And then it got a little bit crazy with more and more resolutions coming out, and then mobile came out, and now it's like, as you said, 2,000 different resolution sizes that you have to accommodate for. So it's a responsive design through and through. So it will scale up regardless, and it won't break on the most obscure size. But that actual physical location of a camera is something that even today I didn't actually think about. I think, oh right, so I can't have some kind of feedback thing in the top right because it's going to be covered up by a punch hole. It's like, oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Yeah, so these kind of things, like, it comes up, but also like it's part of the challenge, it's part of the fun, really. I do think working on mobile games, I have way more responsibility, I would say, than in a traditional video game, because because like you have to kind of think about it holistically, like so much so. And after my mobile games job, I'm with Roll7 now, and we're back on PC/consoles, and I think I'm again quite lucky that I was able to go through a bunch of different platforms. So my first job, just to quickly go back to that, was a Vita game. So that was also like a gamepad, but also because the Vita, you have a touchpad on the back of the Vita. So we were kind of thinking about how to incorporate that as well. I don't think we used much of it. There was like one game that did it really well, which is Tearaway. All the other games kind of just ignored it. And I was like, yeah, fair.
Such an amazing game. Such an amazing RIP the Vita. And Tearaway Unfolded on the PS4 is still, I think, one of the best examples of that DualShock 4's different input specialties. Like it uses the touchpad, it uses the light bar, it uses everything. And Tearaway Unfolded is, oh god, what a game! It's so beautiful. And you could draw on the touchpad, or you could even sync your iPad to it to create your own papercraft shapes that get imported into the world. What a game! So good, so good.
Yeah, but if you could imagine just how many different inputs you could put in, you'd need an UX designer just to make sure this all works and it's intuitive, or like the prompts that you have on screen is clear enough that people understand what's happening. Yeah, it's a cool job, I would say.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit between like user experience versus UI, because there is still a little bit of like a lack of understanding as to what those proper disciplines are, because they are very different specialisms, but they tend to get encompassed or grouped together. As you said, they should really be two separate hires essentially, but you have to really excel in both.
Yeah. I wouldn't say you need to excel in both, like especially if you are lucky enough to go for to be hired at a company that has a specialty of one or the other, because it does feel like you're context switching quite a bit. So with UI design, it's very much visual development. So you're going to work alongside your art director and also the other artists, because you want some assets here and there. You're doing a bit of animation, color theory. You're creating entire style guides and things like that. So that to me is also super exciting, but it's very, very heavy towards visual and art side. Whereas with UX, user experience, it's a lot more research based. So you do like you do play test, you watch feedback of how other people play the game, and you interview people, and also like it's a lot of reading as well, because I realized that when we want to decide on any one feature, like okay, let's say you have a toggle and a slider. Like, would you want to press A before you go into the slider, or do you just want to push your analog stick and the slider just works? So like, there's these kind of like smaller micro decisions that you as the UX designer, you kind of have to decide on. But like, what takes a long time is video games has been around a while, especially even software has been around a while. People are used to certain patterns and design decisions that is kind of embedded into like the collective conscious of how things should work. So that's what we call like a mental model of how people expect how something should work.
Yeah.
But when we do it, sometimes you kind of don't know that. We'll be like, oh yeah, like what does this game do, or what does this other software do? Like, what's the convention here? And like the key word here, which is convention, there isn't one. just like, let's see how many, because conventions are just that, in the sense that like it just happens to be the pattern that most software use right now. But is it the best? Probably not. Like, it depends. Like, people are always constantly learning ways to make to make the UX of products better. Yeah. So part of that is literally just me booting up 5-6 different games and just like fucking around in the menu and see like, oh, so this does this, this does that, and then coming back to my stakeholders and be like, right, these games do it this way, so we're just going to stick to this. We're not going to reinvent the wheel, everyone, So that's part of UX, where you're researching and you're playing this empathetic role of the player and hoping that it works. And also just an advocate for extra things like accessibility. That is part of UX as well, isn't it?
Totally. It's amazing to see how much accessibility has now coming to the forefront of the conversation the past couple of years or so, or maybe even actually just the last year, with The Last of Us 2 getting such an amazing breadth of options within how to completely change the UI in the game, how to even change the like the art direction of the game completely changed. If you're colorblind, you can have the game be entirely black and white with objects to be like a bright color, so you can easily navigate and play the game. I think that is fascinating, and I would imagine that would be conversations with your art director, maybe tearing his hair out to say, what are you doing to my beautifully designed looking game? Why are you making it black and white? But the conversation is, well, this is for people who are colorblind or for people who are registered as blind that need to be able to play your game and play it through to completion. I think I remember a while back there was such a fascination with the QTE events where you have to mash the button, but there was data coming out at the time, like Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Like, so many people didn't complete it because at the very end of the game there's a lot of button mashy sequences, and RSI injuries and stuff like that. They just physically cannot repeatedly tap a button. And then we ultimately got the ability to just press and hold the button, and that become more prevalent in a lot of games. And that is something that I actually do now as well. It's like, I can't be bothered mashing a button. So I immediately go into the options, say, can I just press and hold to do this QTE event? And I always turn it on. I'm getting old. I'm in my 40s. My joints are not as nimble as what they used to be. I'm getting maybe a little bit of arthritis as well. So it helps me out. But it's amazing to see all of this is now becoming really, really commonplace, but there's still a lot of work to do there. But it's amazing to see that conversation completely shifting to say, okay, accessibility needs to be factored in at the very beginning of the user experience of your product, your game, whatever it is you're wanting to create. And it's very, very difficult to hack it in after the game has launched when you're then getting feedback, because it is a lot of the times it has to get done at the root level when you're creating a lot of the systems. Yep. Background noise, maybe, is it?
Yep. There's someone literally drilling a hole right now. Like, I swear to God, it's been quiet all day. This is when they decide to drill a fucking hole. Anyway, sorry, you might have to edit this out later.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's a good thing where I could just talk for ages about absolutely nonsense, and then it's fine.
Yeah. So I think I love the fact that accessibility now, the question isn't should we have it, more like in what form does that look like? It's like a given that we do expect these settings to be in there. And the thing that I love about, the breakthroughs that let's say The Last of Us 2 as an example, the best thing about that is that it sets a benchmark that other games can also achieve, because obviously Naughty Dog, they are a bigger company, they have way more resources, they can actually seek out people to be to test out their games, and they have the manpower to implement it. So the good that comes from that is that other people can literally just look at the Last of Us 2 and use that as an example of how to do X, Y, and Z, or maybe like, oh yeah, we like this part of it, but maybe for this game it's better off to do it this way, and But like, the point is, the blueprint is there now, whereas before this, I think the struggle was that we, smaller studios, they just don't have the time. And, like, we're only now kind of being more vocal about anti-crunch, and anything that adds on more time to your development is a bit of we're not sure if we want to do it. So it's nice to see, like, the industry as a whole accepting this and also pushing it forward, obviously. And I'm blown away at how the audiences, when they respond to it as well. Like, you always see like someone being all like, "Oh, thank you for putting this." It's like, I can't remember. There's a term for this, but I can't remember what it's called. But it's basically saying that anything that improves accessibility just by default improves the lives of everybody else that uses it. So like, the best example is subtitles. When you have subtitles on by default, most people actually leave it on because it's useful for them than for it is to be not on by default. And it's kind of funny because you always have a few very loud minority who are just like, oh, we don't need this, the game's supposed to be difficult, like blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, yeah, but the game can be played multiple different ways. Like, this is also something I'm kind of, I see like the the fight, not really the fight, like, you know, the conversation must be had not just with players but also with game designers as well, because as game designers, I think a few designers have this like very pure, like purist view of how the game should be, because like, no, I want it to be this way and it has to be played this way. And I'm more keen on the ideas like, yeah, we can do that, but that's like one way of playing it, but also can we have these optional things that we can put on and let the players choose, like, do you want to hide this or show this, or, you know, and things, and all things like that. And I, you know, I don't have a disability at all, but I do use all of the accessibility options all the time because I'm just shit at games. And, you know, whatever that gives me an extra edge, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm honestly the same. I turned a lot of them on for Control, which was Remedy Entertainment's last big game. I thought, you know what, if I can just have like an unlimited dash move, for example, like that, I can just keep zipping around the environment, have a blast with it, and not really care too much about, oh God, I'm about to get attacked or about to die because I'm just terrible. As small little touches and how different game devs approach accessibility in different ways. And I know there's been a really heated conversation about like game difficulty versus game accessibility. And there's a lot of confusion there as well as to accessibility doesn't mean pandering. It doesn't mean making a game easier, because a lot of people with accessibility challenges want to play really, really hard games. They want to play Returnal on, I don't know if that game has difficulty levels, but they want to play it on like the hardest setting. But there's things in the game like maybe where it controls which are just awkward for certain inputs that are maybe required. But if accessibility options can maybe address those input options, but it can still be an amazingly challenging game. And I think that there's a lot of things as part of that conversation which do get lost between accessibility doesn't mean easy. It certainly does not mean easy. It can be a balls to the wall, brutal game, but you're including the ability for more people just to be able to play it and actually get through the game, which I think is really interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And it's opening up a lot of very innovative game design these days, you know, because people are trying to figure out, you know, how can we make a game exciting and accessible? And, you know, it's good to be inclusive as the whole thing. Like inclusivity also means being inclusive of people who need extra settings here and there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So we mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about like UI and trends and doing what works, because there's been amazing examples and data from other games as part of that research phase. How challenging is it to not to fall down the route of we're just going to do like this because they're doing it? You still want to be creative and do your own thing and have your own solutions to things, but there is that tried and trusted research there to say gamers expect, for example, a weapon wheel, for example. You know, that used to be everywhere for the longest time. And then The Last of Us, they went almost old school to like Half-Life 2 with the D-pad, like the cross kind of thing with their inventory management. But then other games still have the weapon wheel. Or you've got things that the shift now for like inventory management is the cursor pointer, which is a bane of my life, but I won't drag that out any too much longer. I hate the cursor pointer. I prefer D-pad. But anyway, that is the trend since Destiny introduced the cursor pointer to hover over your bits. Like Assassin's Creed has adopted that like crazy in all of their games now. Immortals Phoenix Rising has the same thing. So they're obviously saying, okay, well, gamers now expect this because these games have been out a few years now. More and more games are doing it like this. So we should do it this way. So from your perspective, how challenging is it to give players what they expect, but also want to do like an original take on systems versus how an interface looks?
So
putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. So like it's interesting that you brought up the stuff like the free cursor, because like we've had a lot of discussion over this as well in the UI UX community. Hold on.
Is that a motorbike or something? We're getting amazing sound effects here, ladies and gentlemen. Anisa is going to just to come back on the show just to have a sound effects show. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. It's definitely one to tune in for.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. So stuff like that. Like I think again, a lot of triple A companies, you know, those companies who are With big budgets, like they can dare to do something drastically different, like the free cursor instead of having a D-pad, and they have the programmer power, time to actually make something good. I think that's great for them. I'm glad that they did it, and I do remember going to GDC and just my mind was blown at the UI talk that they did with about the cursors and things like that. But that was a few years ago. And, these kind of games have been around a while. We see a lot of different games adopt that new convention. Again, convention is just that. It's just a popular thing of the current era. A lot of the complaints that came out actually is really bad for accessibility. Like it is actually really difficult to use. And unless you have like soft locking or, making sure that it's like just sensitive enough or not too sensitive, just like that sweet spot of being able to use it properly. Like if you don't do that well, then the entire thing is really annoying to use. And again, from an accessibility point of view, people much prefer using the D-pad, just going up, down, left, right, because, again, limited navigation options, meaning there's less chances of you doing something that you didn't mean to do. And that's the pain points of any software, is that if you end up doing something you didn't mean to, that is bad UX, flat out. So, yeah, I much prefer if we don't use the free cursor. Like to me, I vote for whatever that is better for accessibility more so than aesthetics. And let's be honest, the free cursor stuff, a lot of innovation is because of aesthetics, because it looks cool. Literally that, it just looks cooler. And I'm okay as long as it doesn't compromise usability. And that's where it is a little bit tough, if you're a UI designer, you would definitely know like UI portfolio websites. So places like Dribbble, and there's this really funny thing in the design world where like Dribbble is quite known to have a lot of like really pretty things, but completely unusable designs. And that's usually a trade-off. Just like how good would this look versus how can you actually navigate it? How can you actually use it?
Yeah. I see a lot of typographers doing these crazy fonts, for example, that look beautiful as just like an alphabet, for example. But if you actually try to put that into a real world context as a headline or a strapline or a bit of information, it's completely illegible. It doesn't even look like a letter. So that's my graphic design bones that I'm picking here, because it is form over function. It needs to always be form over function. Function over form. I'm getting it the opposite way around. It needs to be functional first, and then make it beautiful. Make it so great to look at is fine, but not at the detriment, as you say, not at the detriment to being usable. And there's always this dichotomy of if something cannot be art if it has a function. That is like an old trope, but I don't believe that is true. Something can have a function and still look absolutely gorgeous, and it can be a really high-end, great piece of design. And if it works as well in a context that maybe you didn't necessarily understand at first, but if it's intuitive enough that you can very quickly work it out, then that is the sweet spot of design and function kind of hitting together at just that sweet spot.
We have, so like, I never fail to mention this video game every time I talk about UI, but Persona 5 is very well known for its amazing UI. And everybody, like, literally everybody knows that I'm a huge fan of it. And I'm always being like, yeah, I wish I did that kind of thing. But interestingly enough, I've seen some discourse saying, just like from fellow UI artists who say like, yeah, but it's actually really hard to navigate. So this touches on the whole like form over function debate. But again, anecdotal data, I have no idea if anyone else feels the same way, but like obviously when I play, I understand it. Like it was to me, it wasn't a struggle. Like I knew where I was, I knew where I was going, like, because there's menu nesting where you go into a menu, and it doesn't really matter how many menus there are, as long as you know where you are, right? And with Persona 5, like the transitions between menu to menu is so extra. Like they put in so much effort in it, and I completely love it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the colors that they use can be like Oh my God.
Don't worry, it's
Sorry.
fine. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. We're going to keep all this in because it makes for our crazy entertaining podcast. But yeah, I agree with Persona 5. And again, it's one of the art books that I need to pick up because I'm a crazy art book collector and I just can't get enough of concept art books. But Persona 5's visual aesthetic is so striking because it's mostly the red, black, and white. And the way they do your text chat, I love that it's not just, I mean, it could have been an in-game mobile phone pops up. You maybe see a little bit of the hand, you see a little bit of the world, and it's all in like a little bit of the screen. I love that the screen just takes over the entirety of the screen. And it's this kind of angled, very visual thing. And you start to see the text thread coming in because everybody understands how text messaging works. When you're seeing the three dots, it's like, okay, somebody's typing. Then it pops in conversation thread. It doesn't have to be within a phone on your screen. They just fill the screen with this really cool looking display. And you can see the little the profile picture coming in as to if it's from Joker or if it's from another character. Again, as you said, you understand it because people know the real world context for text messaging. Therefore, you can take a leap on the visual look of it and still not lose the player for their understanding as to how it's supposed to work.
It's really on brand. That's the thing. Like everything, you can see that it's been made by, it's almost like it's the one person doing it. I'm sure they have like quite a big team, but everything is so strongly tied together. And I like the fact that they do, some of the color choices is very sus to me in a sense that like, again, red, black, white is not a nice UI color. Like it's a thing in graphic design that red is a negative color, right? But in Persona 5, that is literally the main color of all of the UI, and they still pulled it off. And this is why I feel like Persona 5, even though, there's a few people who might not like it as much, but you know what? It sold really well. People have cosplayed it. People have done like analysis videos over it. I think it did very well. I think it's a really good case study of understanding the rules and knowing it well enough to break them. And that is Persona 5 to me. They broke so many rules, but it works. It works, and I don't understand it. And I'm so angry. I'm so angry at people who are good at their jobs. Why are you so good?
You're going to have to do a proper case study breakdown talk on the UI and the aesthetic of Persona.
I know. I say this every time, but it's like if I had infinite time, if I had like time to do yet another project, because I'm always doing all these things, I would love to do like a like shot by shot analysis of each and every single UI that is in Persona 5.
Well, I'm going to have to invite you back just for you to do that. You could be like a keynote speaker on the Weekend Catch-Up Club and give the full presentation. So therefore, it's set in stone. It's like, you will do this. You've got to make you do it.
Put it in a calendar. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a little bit about Limit Break, because you, I believe, are the founder of Limit Break. Is that correct?
I am, yes.
So talk to me about this, because it sounds fascinating and hugely important.
Yeah, so Limit Break Mentorship is a mentorship program aimed at underrepresented people in the UK games industry. So what this means is that we want to match mentees, usually people who are new to the industry or people who are trying to get into the industry from a marginalized background. So this includes LGBTQ, underrepresented genders, which is women, non-binary people, trans people, as well as people of color. So if you are in one of these categories, then you can apply as a mentee, and we match you up with an experienced person in the industry. And this came out to be, so we are in our third year right now. So I've been running this for 3 years, and this is our biggest year to date. We have 700 people signed up. And yeah, it's a lot. It's kind of, I'm really proud of it, because like in year one, I expected maybe 20, 40 people at most. And we ended up having 100 people in year one. And that was like, I made sure to make the scope really small. So like I only said that, okay, this is just going to be for underrepresented genders because, well, I'm a woman, and I felt like I it was born because I wanted it, basically. Like, I really wish something like this existed for myself, but it didn't. So, I'm like, all right, let's just me at
You took the
how old
initiative
was I
and
at the time?
created it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like 2019. Yeah, it was 2019. I was like 20 years old. I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. And I had a single sheet of a Google document with like the main ideas of what this is going to be. And I kind of blew up, and obviously we kind of continued in 2020 during the pandemic. It used to be that you had to meet each other in person. Being in London, it's kind of easier that way because everybody's kind of at this big hub anyway. But with 2020, obviously everyone's at home, so we have to push it online. So once you push it online, it kind of didn't make sense just to keep it for Londoners.
Sure.
And that's when I opened up to the rest of the UK, and we jumped to like 350 people,
Wow,
which
okay.
was, yeah. And that was still with the caveat of like, let's just keep it, for underrepresented genders. And then this year, I brought a team together so that, because it was burning me out, because as much as I love doing it and I know that's important, but it was a lot of work for just one person, especially for me, because I had a full-time job. I still have a full-time job now. Right now I'm full-time at Roll7, and during the last 2 years as well. And a lot of the people who work in these kind of grassroots organizations, we all do it on our free time. It's all volunteers. And it's really nice to see that the industry as a whole sees the importance of this. And for year 3, it was so much easier to get like sponsorship money, which obviously we can now pay freelancers, we can pay for services, because first 2 years we were just using anything that was free, that was like keep the cost down as much as possible. I was actually paying a lot out of my own pocket and hoping that the sponsors would like reimburse me later on. But like for this year, we've finally registered ourselves as a proper company. We're a community interest company, which means we're a nonprofit. And it's it's getting bigger, and we're expecting it to get bigger every year. And with every year it gets better. We do listen to our members. We want to know how was their experiences. Like we try not to promise anything, because what happens when people sign up to this is that they would come in and be like, hi, I want to find a mentor so that I can get a job. And, just the idea of you getting a job, like, I want to say that, some people do get a job out of Limit Break, because their mentors, were really helping them with interviews, or, getting some connections or things like that, But it's also something that's kind of outside of your control. And we don't want to promise such things that, we don't want to set you up for failure just in case you don't get a job. But the important thing is actually progress. How do you, like, it's mostly soft skills. I have to tell you, like, flat out. I know people come in being all like, oh, maybe I need to learn, this certain skill or whatever, which is great. Like, you should totally work on that. But a huge blocker to all of these things are just emotional, and also confidence, in the sense that, like, a lot of people, especially if you're marginalized, you internalize this idea that you're not good enough, or you don't deserve the word deserve is in air quotes, deserve to be in the industry, which is such complete bullshit. And you know what, even the mentors, you will not believe me, but like, most people with imposter syndrome are the mentors themselves. And I'm constantly being the person who's kind of, giving them confidence, being like, no, you're doing great. Like, your experience has value. Like, you have value. You have so much to teach people. And so it's become a thing where it's funny, because like, I started it because I wanted to find a mentor, but I ended up like just running the thing.
That's great, because it sounds like the meteoric rise in interest in Limit Break shows that there was such a desire for the people from the demographics that you've mentioned that felt like they didn't have access to the people that could maybe give them advice and be mentors and show them the skills and the tips and things that they have gained over their experience in the industry, and to relay that knowledge onto it so they can learn and hopefully get an opportunity. And yeah, as you said, it's not a recruitment tool. It's not about setting people up for apprenticeships or jobs or anything like that. It's connecting, it's networking for then mentors to share knowledge. And if the mentee can get something from that, that's amazing. It shows them that regardless of your color, your background, economic status, or anything like that, then it is possible. And this is how it's kind of worked out for these mentors who are, wanting to be a part of it. And it's amazing to hear that you're obviously getting completely snowed under with people that want to be mentored, but also people volunteering to be a mentor, because that can be a huge challenge as well, as just getting people to sign up to, look, would you be willing to be a mentor? And then there's this whole other pressure side of, oh my God, is the responsibility of being a mentor to somebody can be a big concern for a lot of people. But then you've got other people that just want to say, I would love to be able to share my story and the things that have helped me in my life, the things that I've done, the things that people that I've talked to and been able to connect to. And just knowledge sharing is such a huge part of any community, and especially within the games industry, because it does feel like it's such a tight, close community.
It's
that
so
everybody does know each other, considering there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of developers and studios out there, but it does feel like everybody knows each other. And it's so cool to see and to hear.
So the main people that we do want to cater to are the mentees, the people that do need extra help. But I also realized after running this a while is that we also provide a platform to more senior people to help, because like you said, there is this huge energy of wanting to help, especially in the last few years, because we had so much, I want to say, like a huge social movement stuff, like Black Lives Matter and Me Too movement and things like this, and people just are a lot more in tune with like what's wrong in the industry in general and the world in general. So they're just like, okay, how can I as an individual help the situation, right? Like, you've done your research, you've read up on all these issues, and you try to be the best version of yourself that you can. But also, like, by being a mentor, like at least with Limit Break, we're giving you a way to do that isn't just monetary, in a sense that, like, a lot of people kind of want to help, but they don't know how, and also they want to mentor, but they don't know how to like kind of show availability, like unless like you're super popular, like unless like you're someone who's really like a hot shot that everybody wants to see on time. Like most people are not that, but doesn't mean that you don't have skills. You obviously do. Like some of the best people I know don't have Twitter accounts, and for good reason. So it's kind of like and also like with Limit Break, the way that we structure things is that it's only for 6 months, meaning it's not a huge commitment. And what I love about it is that within the 6 months, you can just stop your mentorship there. But some people do get along really well with their mentees that, they just continue past Limit Break, or some people just make friends out of it. I know for a fact that a few mentors have hired their mentees to be part of their companies because, they get along so well and they know that, they're good at their jobs. So it's kind of like, I obviously don't want to take credit for any of my mentees' successes, but I'm so happy to be able to kind of provide a way for these connections to happen, because when you're young, when you're new, when you're a minority, it's so important to find others who, number one, look like you, and number two, even if they don't, they could tell you like, no, you are meant to do this, or like, or even if you're not there yet skill wise, like they could provide you with a way on how to improve, because if you kind of just do things on your own without getting feedback from someone more experienced, then you have no idea if you're improving, right?
It's why access is so important. It's so difficult to get for a lot of minorities. It's why representation and role models are so important. So take all the credit, because you've built a framework, built a platform to enable both ends of the spectrum to be able to come together to share their both experiences and to hopefully uplift future generations to do and explore their passions, and maybe it will lead to the next wave of killer AAA franchises or the next piece of tech that you just never know what's going to spiral from that. That's ripples in the pond, right? You never know where they're gonna lead to.
I'm extremely proud of it for sure, but also at the same time, I'm hyper aware of a lot of the issues that the industry is going through can't be fixed with stuff like this. As in, yeah, it's great that we want to help more people join. A lot of internships are going on. There's a lot of other advocacy groups popping up as well. Like Limit Break is not at all unique in the sense, and that's good. I think that's a good thing. We need a lot of other organizations kind of like helping each other out. But the main issue I feel is that we need more from the top down, as in we need more women, we need more people of color to be in positions of power. We need them to be seniors, we need them to be leads, we need them to be studio founders. Like, so just like let's just choose gender for as an example. Like, you can count the amount of female founders in games with like one hand, maybe two hands. Like I think I recently asked on the internet, on Twitter, just being like, hey, does anybody know examples of studios that are founded by women? And it's the same names over and over. It's the same exact names. And like, obviously no shade to them. Amazing. I love them. Like, they're amazing women, but at the same time, there's not enough of them. And if you look closely, they're all white women. And that's also kind of a reflection of how a lot of right now the tech industry, games tech, when they say diversity, they mean like, let's add a white woman to this. And I was like, well, diversity means a little bit more than that. Yeah. So the power structures, it's still upholding, the same kinds of people, and it's difficult. Like, I can assure you, if you talk to any of these female founders, they can tell you just how difficult it is for them. And it really is. But can you imagine how much worse it is for like, for a Black woman to be a founder?
Totally. That's why it was so encouraging when I saw recently, I think it may have been last year, where there was an Indian game, I think it was called Raji. And that was developed by, I think it was an all-female team in India, and that was incredibly rare, because I think for that particular region, I don't want to get myself into trouble by speaking out of turn, because it's not something I'm knowledgeable of, but I think like women in senior career roles are quite rare in India. But it was so amazing to see. Okay, they created their own studio, and they've delivered this, what I believe is a really beautiful game, and that becomes a symbol, a role model for young Indian girls to say, wow, I can do this as well. I can lead a company. I can be project manager of something, creative director of something, art director of something. I can go into STEM subjects and create something that society is telling me I can't do, but look at this over here. I've got this role model right here to be able to say, yeah, I can do this. And that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
I mean, it's usually the pushback of people saying like, oh, you're only promoting them or hiring them because they're a minority and not the best person for their job. And I'm just like, oh my God. Number one, shut the fuck up. Number two, they definitely can be the best for the job. But at the same time, if you see, there's this whole thing where like, mediocre men get promoted to leadership roles so much easier, and I think it's because the current structure supports it, and a lot of people kind of don't question it. They're kind of like, yeah, okay, I guess you can do the job, but a lot of again, minorities just get scrutinized over the same job role, or like there's this thing where female CEOs are only brought in to help floundering companies, like companies that are already going to go under, and they kind of pin it on the woman when it eventually does. Does huge
it's like a lot of like chalice a lot of times.
It's like the glass ceiling is real, but there's also like, I don't know what to call it, a glass cliff, I guess, where we're just thrown off it. It's frustrating, but at the same time, like, that's where I hope to see the industry go, like work towards. We see a lot of like incentives these days where like the UK Games Fund or I'm so sorry. Hold on.
That's okay. we can edit that a little bit out. That's absolutely fine. This is it's such a great conversation, and it does feel like we need to spend way longer on it, and I absolutely would. I'd love to have you back to maybe.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. I would love to have you back to maybe delve into this longer. Absolutely would. But before we wrap up, I would love to talk a little bit about your roller skating career as well, because I don't want to be flippant and talk about something fun when we've just been talking at length about something that is very serious, very, very important. And it's something that we need to delve into and talk more about as well, because it is so important. And the more in which we can raise the conversation, I'm trying to fill here and not trying to fluff my words, but yeah, it's the more people that we can get talking about it and talking about this kind of stuff and raising awareness for it, then hopefully the industry will change. And I think it's beginning to very slowly move in the right direction. But again, it's very, very slow. It's not something that can be fixed overnight at all.
Yep. But I guess like if we're just going to quickly put this into a bow and wrap it up, that talking point is that I do want to see more funds being given to minorities to start their own games, to start their own studios and their own projects, because, you know, we want to, it's not just giving them money, it's also giving them power, you know, it's giving them the influence and power so that they can also bring others behind them. You know, there's what do you call that? Like pushing the ladder down. Pulling the ladder down, I don't know, behind you. Yeah. So like, for me at least, this is kind of why I started Limit Break. You know, I feel like I'm in a really good position right now where I do have a voice in the industry. Like people do listen to me after like, I don't know, I've been around for like less than a decade now, and I've just been shouting about lots of different things that I care about. So it's nice to kind of let others kind of have some airtime to talk and, you know, give back to the community. Yeah. But yeah. I can finally talk about roller skating now. To be honest, I'm really excited about roller skating, so I'm not mad at all.
Yeah, so I'd love you to come back and maybe for a longer conversation just about
I can rant about this for a long time.
That's fine. I'll give you a keynote speaker slot or something like that on the next episode just for that, because it is hugely important, and I don't want to cut it short and turn on to something what could be seen as, oh, he's just flipped from something really, really serious to something incredibly flippant and fun. That is kind of jarring for the audience as well. But
well, in a way, you know what? Roller skating also has so roller skating is also really interesting because if you're on game dev Twitter at all, it's a bit of a trend now, I guess, that a lot of game devs have picked up roller skating as a hobby. This is definitely because of it's the pandemic, right? Like all we could do is just go outside and walk like for 5 minutes a day or something, and it's stupid. It's boring. Like, well, what else can you do? Oh wait, you can roller skate. So roller skating, I've always liked it as a concept, but it was actually my friends who kind of it was my friends that peer pressured me into buying my first pair of skates, and we've kind of been learning together.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Some DIY going on there. It's amazing.
Honestly,
we should start a little competition as to try and guess what's getting constructed in the background there.
I don't know. God. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're good.
So I think I don't know why my friends were interested in it, but I know one of them has been really into TikTok, and you know the roller skate TikToks are gorgeous, and there's oh my god, I'm so sorry. Oh my god. Okay,
don't
roller skating TikToks are great because everyone's kind of like they either look super elegant doing it, or they look like super cool because they're doing like jam skating, which is like when you're dancing in it, and then on top of that there's also like park skating, so that's more of like where you have the quarter pipes and the bowls and you drop into it, you do tricks and stuff. So like there's a lot of different ways that you can roller skate, and I kind of find it funny that in my little like skate crew, like there's a circle of us, and we all we're learning together, right? And we're all new to it, but we've all kind of have distinct styles of what kind of skating we want to like go into.
There should be a law against DIYing when your neighbors are trying to record after 6 p.m. at night. There should be like a law against it. But
so quiet all day.
I know. But it looks amazing anyway from your Twitter and your well, I'm not on TikTok, so I can't vouch for that, but your Twitter posts look so much fun. It's like, man, I haven't roller skated since I was a kid, and I used to always bang my knees up. I've got scars on my knees for when I used to roller skate. So I don't know if my joints could deal with it if I got into it in my 40s. That's just not going to happen, sadly.
Yeah. So I'm in my early 30s now, and it's definitely showing on my body in a sense that like I fell down once without pads on, and the bruise has been there for like 2 weeks now. And it looks really dramatic as well. It looks worse than it actually feels. But yeah, it's kind of like, okay, so the interesting thing about skating is that it's actually it's picked up in popularity, especially among like people on social media, TikTok and such, myself included, like but it actually is deep rooted in Black culture. So it's something that Black people have always been doing, and it's the roller rinks has always been like a space for them to be able to like freely express themselves. So it's quite deeply rooted in that as well, which is why especially in London, like a huge amount of skaters, like roller skaters, are from the Black community, and jam skating, dancing, the type of music that they do, all of that stuff. It's so cool to see, and I think it's really important for me to say this because is a lot of, I think, Black culture has been kind of taken by like again white people, and then it's seen as like something that is super trendy and blah blah blah, but it's actually quite rooted in a culture that we'd want to respect and also kind of pay homage and tribute to as well. So personally, for me though, I just want to know how to drop into a bowl because I want to impress my 7-year-old nephew. He's okay. So the backstory is that my nephew is 7, but he's nonverbal because he's hard of hearing. So he has like a hearing aid, but he doesn't talk much. And obviously, the best way to impress him is visually. And what better way than to drop into a massive bowl and do some tricks, right? Like. This is my goal for the next year because I'll be visiting home. I'm from Malaysia, so I visit home once a year. So my goal is that by my next visit, I'm brave enough to attempt some bowls and do some like cruising or carving in there, and hopefully I shall win the affection of my nephew.
I'll be expecting you to drop into the half pipe, and then when you get to the top of the half pipe, you'll do like the handstand thing, and then you pirouette and then back down again on the other side of the half pipe.
Oh my gosh. Some of my friends have learned how to do that, and she's only started skating since last year. So, and to be fair, she's like super mega talented.
You completely hate her now. Yeah.
She's also young. She's also like 10 years younger than me. So, they have the flexibility. It might take me maybe 2-3 years to get there, but as long as I can drop into a quarter pipe, that's all I want to try and see.
Fantastic. Anisa, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolutely fantastic chat. We've been going for just over an hour here, and as we've covered so many great topics. I've absolutely loved your time and talking to you, to hear your perspective, your experience, and of course hearing all about Limit Break. If anybody wants to get in touch, not just about a career in UI UX, but also Limit Break itself, where can they get in touch with you?
So you can find me on Twitter, which is @StudioAnisa. And you can also find out more about Limit Break at www.limitbreak.co.uk and also on our Twitter, which is at LB Mentorship. We open up for registration every April. So it's closed for this year, 2021, but it'll be open again in April 2022. And obviously, it would be great to have more of you on board, both mentors and mentees. And yeah, if you want to see more of my skating videos, which I did put in a lot of effort with all the video editing and the music and stuff. So you can follow me on Twitter and also on TikTok at Studio Anisa. Also Instagram. I'm on all the things.
Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Weekend Catch-Up Club podcast. Thank you to everybody who has been listening, especially for the sound effects from Anisa. It's been absolutely awesome.
I'm so sorry.
It's been
just
great fun.
Brain.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, thank you again. If you enjoy these shows, like, follow, support the channel, help us grow, because I love doing these podcasts. I love bringing together really interesting people, interesting voices, incredibly knowledgeable voices as well. And until the next time, I'll be back with another great guest. So take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.